Good morning. This has been a very interesting week for me. Lots of contemplation and lots of emotion as well. Earlier this week, I watched a 6-hour documentary put together by Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. called Many Rivers to Cross. It kind of portrays the history of African Americans in this country. I think that every child should be required to watch this at least twice by the time they get to high school. I also think that every child should be required to read Howard Zinn's book, People's History of the United States, by the time they're in high school. I also watched a very interesting interview. It was actually filmed maybe 2003, quite a while ago. And the interviewer was Angela Davis, the activist, speaker, writer. And who she was interviewing were the actors Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee, his wife. In the first part of the interview, they kind of focused on the difficulty and the struggles that black actors had in getting ahead, getting parts, the discrimination in the Screen Actors Guild. And then they began to talk about their activism, their role in civil rights, human rights. And Ossie talked very much about their interaction with groups of every kind, along with Sidney Poitier, Harry Belafonte, Orson Welles, Dr. King, Malcolm X, and how they were always asked to be the speakers and masters of ceremonies at fundraisers events and organizing events all over the United States. And as often as they could, they said yes. They worked their entire lives in this environment of struggle. But something was said that really got me. In the summation of his speaking, Ossie Davis said, "You know, we included our kids in all of our work. We didn't leave them at a babysitter. They went to all the meetings, all the fundraisers, all the strategy sessions, all the demonstrations." He said, "We wanted them to know the life that they had to lead." But here comes the part. He said, "But one day when you realize you have committed yourself to the purpose of serving your fellow human beings for the betterment of your fellow human beings," he said, "you realize a satisfaction that is undescribable, because it's personal, but it's not personal, it's collective." He said, then the real thing is one morning it just sneaks up on you. And you become aware that you know what real love is, divine love. I couldn't stop thinking about that all week. That's why the Inquiring Minds that went out this week was all about serving. Serving your fellow man for the good of the whole. This thing that I've called for years, this we consciousness. How many, you're probably sick of hearing me talk about it. But it's the we consciousness rather than the me consciousness. And I've heard other people speak of that, but I've never really met anybody that speaks of it on an ongoing basis, or at least I hadn't thought I had. Ward and Susan Johnson have a customer. His name is Johan Anderson. And for years, he has published songbooks. A lot of religious songbooks, a lot of gold standards. I've got one of them that he gave me that's about that thick. And it's got, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of songs in it. And I use it when our band plays. If somebody wants to hear a song and I don't remember all the words or the exact tune, I can open it up because it's got the lyrics and chords. Hundreds of songs. Well, Ward called me the other day and he said, Johan's got another book he wants to do, but he asked me to have you take a look at it and he wants to know what you think. This is the book. It's still being put together. I understand a couple days ago there were some changes on the cover, but it's not a songbook. There are a couple songs in the back, but it's called Creation's Grand Design of Love and Free Choice. And the whole book is about we consciousness versus me consciousness. I was amazed. And I'm going to let you know when this book is finished, because you can see how thick it is. Most philosophers and theologians write several volumes, 300, 400, 500 pages long, to let you know how complex their theories are. This is like 50, 60 pages. And it's written so anybody can understand it. And if you read this, this could be your little checklist to go through life with. We consciousness. You know, as I think about this, I think again what Ozzy was talking about. When you find your purpose and you commit yourself to that purpose, when we come into this world, my friends, we come into it with a toolbox inside of us. And Johan wrote down a list, and he doesn't call it a toolbox. In fact, it's a whole different context that he uses this list. But I saw it, and I thought, that's the tools in the toolbox. That's what we come in with. I'm going to read what's written here. We come into this life with tools within us, tools that we can use to develop a we consciousness, that we can develop and manifest our purpose in this lifetime. Those tools are joy, grace, care, equality, humbleness, gentleness, patience, hope, compassion, courage, sharing, goodness, kindness, generosity, gratitude, wisdom, peace, justice, mercy, self-control, respect, courage, and a kind of love that has no strings attached. That's what we have coming in, installed at the factory. But the minute we get here and become aware, people start telling us, hey, you don't need those tools. We got the tools you need. If you want to get ahead, you take care of you, buddy. Get all you can. Let everybody else worry about themselves. First thing you need to do is to dominate as many people as you can. And you can do that by keeping them afraid, keeping them angry, keeping them hating each other, keeping them divided. If you need to, use force and violence to maintain that dominance. The only thing you need to worry about is making as much money as you can, because who got the most money got the most toys, and you win. And that's what society tells us to use as our tools. So how much satisfaction are you going to get by using the tools that society gives you? That kind of satisfaction that Ozzy was talking about. Versus how much satisfaction are you going to get using the tools that Spirit installed within each of us? Is domination and hatred ever going to let you experience or know what love is, divine love? I hope all of us, there's not a whole lot going on right now. Get your shot. But other than that, spend some time really thinking. We have free will. Really think, which tools do you use? This we consciousness. Remember, I've said over and over and over again, consciousness is that unseen power or energy that controls your thought, your words, and your action at any given moment in time. What kind of consciousness do you feed? Do you work at? Do you try to be aware of? Do you try to present? Do you try to cultivate in your life? Which toolbox do you use? And then I'm going to ask you to think about something else. We all know all the woes. Wayne talked about them early in his talk last week. And by the way, thank you, Wayne, for stepping in for me last week. I really appreciate it. It was a great talk, by the way. But we all know all the woes. But Ozzy said something about this. He said he looked around. Things were horrible for black people, horrible. And he asked himself, well, what have I done to make that change? We got a lot of hatred and a lot of fear, a lot of domination and violence in this world. We're all aware of that. I asked myself this morning, what have I done personally to make that change? It's really something to think about. What tools have I used? Maybe I'll just watch the Super Bowl instead of pondering that. I don't think so. Life is terribly short. And we have, each of us, by grand design, by divine design, each of us has a purpose. And a purpose with the foundation of love, free choice. Each of us has the capacity to live our lives predominantly with a we consciousness. We do. And that's the truth, and so it is.